I did this really like simple everyday work makeup kind of look. I did this today. I actually did it during a meeting via video. It was my bi-weekly clinical consultation with a whole bunch of other psychologists, and so some of the meeting today was on clinical issues and self-care, and some of the meeting was on makeup. So I promised that I would show them like what I did and also explain why I did what I did. So I'm gonna go ahead and take this off and take you through my process. Be right back. Okay, so first things first, you want to make sure that you're starting with a clean face. And once you wash your face and everything, go ahead and put on your moisturizers, your toner, your sunscreen. I'm going in with some toner, and this is just from Murad. It is their clarifying toner. You can put it on a cotton pad, but sometimes I just like put it in my hands and kind of just press it into my face. Then go in with whatever other skincare you tend to use. Sometimes I will put this like vitamin C cream on, but right now I'm just going to put on some moisturizer. This is the Perricone MD Photo Brightening Moisturizer, and it does have SPF in it, which I like because you want to make sure you put on your sunscreen as well. And then go ahead and, that looked gross. Go ahead and rub that in. Now, since we're going to do a pretty simple makeup, like eyeshadow look, I'm just going to start with my base, which is my foundation, powder, and all of those things. Now, let me find it first. Today I am going to use my Danessa Myricks Yummy Skin Blurring Balm Powder. Now I'm going to use this because this is a product that is pretty easy to use. You can use your fingers to put it on, you can use a sponge, you can use a brush, whatever feels most comfortable. And it is a light coverage kind of product. So that means that it won't look like I have on a full face of makeup. Like you might still be able to see like some blemishes and discoloration a little bit, but I'm okay with that. So basically this is just to kind of make everything a bit smoother in terms of color and tone. It's not necessarily gonna cover my whole face in a new color. Now, the shade that I have is shade 9, and let me tell you why I chose that shade. Now, initially, I purchased shade 8, which is the shade right before the one I currently have. That shade was described as being for dark skin with golden undertones. When I put that one on, it was a little too light for me. It was a little too yellow. And so I went to shade 9, which is dark deep with golden undertones. So it was kind of just a little bit darker. I tend to go with neutral undertones because I have like warm and cool undertones, kind of depending on how much sun I get, you know, all that jazz. So I like to go with neutral undertones and then use my like blush and bronzer and things like that to add some warmth back to my face. But this one works really well, and at some points it might be like trial and error to figure out which shade is going to work best for you. So you want to make sure that you're checking not just in the Sephora lighting, because it's not gonna look the same. You want to look in natural lighting. You want to also see how the shade on your face matches like your neck and your chest. So you want to make sure that it's as seamless as possible so there aren't any harsh demarcations where the makeup ends and your skin begins, you know? So I'm just taking this brush from Anissa Beauty, and you can see I'm at the edges of this. So I'm just going into it, and I am swiping it on to my face, and I am making sure to bring it down my neck. You can also use your fingers if you like, or a sponge. This product is pretty versatile. So as you can see, it gives me just a little bit of coverage. Like you can still see my skin. Doesn't look like things are caked on. And that is just how a light coverage product will do. If I were using a fuller coverage product, it would just be fuller coverage. So I tried to avoid right under my eyes because that is where I'm going to put some concealer, and I don't want to cake things on to make like things crease a little bit faster, especially as we get older. You know, stuff creases, so I don't want to help it crease. But also, this area under your eye is like a pretty sensitive area. So for me, I just don't want to build up a whole bunch of products there. So you want to make sure that everything is just blended in. You can do swiping. I will often do patting. So it's like patting the product into my skin. You want to go over all the places. Just make sure you're getting that foundation or whatever you're using on your face. So usually the next step for me after getting that base on is to go in with my concealer. Now, I can either go with a concealer that matches my skin tone. So if I have areas of darkness that are really coming through that I want to cover up more and I don't want to keep like adding on foundation, I can take a little bit of concealer and spot conceal. So that would include like taking the concealer wand, and if it were my shade, like placing the concealer where I want to conceal a bit more. I'm not too worried about that because I'm also going to still go in with like bronzer and blush, and that will help things out. But I do like to brighten my under eye area just so that I can look more awake or like I got some sleep. So what I do is I usually pick a concealer that is 1 to 2 shades lighter than my complexion. So I'm usually in the dark, deep range of shades. So I'll go to like medium tan, or if I'm in deep, I'll go to dark. Just like moving up a little bit in the shades to find the perfect concealer shade. So the one that I have right here is from Dose of Colors. The one weird thing about this one is a lot of their concealers have like an orange undertone, and sometimes it like separates, but it's a whole other to-do thing to talk about. So the shade I have is shade 25 Dark. So in their foundations, I'm in the deep side. So I'll go to dark, which is one like up, for my concealer. And the way I usually do my concealer is I like to place some concealer in the inner corner area just to give some like brightness. And then I also place concealer right here at the outer corner just to provide me a bit of a lift. So the look I'm usually going for is awake. So I'm putting some here. I'm going to put it on both sides. And then I go in and I put some here. Now, that's fine if you just want to conceal the eyes, but I also use concealer as a way to highlight various areas of my face. So the way I think about it is like when I'm out in the sun, what is sort of brightened and highlighted and what is darkened. So whatever is kind of highlighted is where I'm going to put the concealer. That means I'm going to put some concealer like right here on my forehead. I'm also going to put some down my nose. And then I'm going to put some on my chin. You can also put some here on your lip, because depending on like your lip area and your level of hairiness, you might get some shadows there, and I want to take away any kind of shadow that will be there. Now, I do let my concealer sit a little bit so that I can get more coverage. So if you allow your concealer to set down a little, it'll just give you a little bit more coverage. So if you are worried about dark areas and things like that, then that can be helpful for your concealer to set a bit. While I do that, I usually just do my brows or something else. So I'm gonna do my brows. Now, I like to have a brow pencil that has a thin pencil point, and I really prefer when there is a spoolie on the end. So I take the spoolie and I brush my brow up. And then what I do is I simply follow the shape of my brow. So that it just makes it look like essentially I'm just filling in my brows. I'm not necessarily drawing a whole new brow onto my face. Also, you don't necessarily need to get black. You can get like a dark brown brow pencil and that will still work. So once I've done that with it sort of the bottom part, then I'm going to brush my brows down and again follow the hairs. I found this to be like the most natural way of doing my brows. And I just do like almost like flicks of the pen. So not just like drawing it, I just do short flicks. Is that the word? So you can see there's a difference. There is the filled in brow and then there's the one that we haven't filled in yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this other one. Now that I have that done, you can always go back and touch things up. I'm gonna go ahead and blend out my concealer. Now you can use that same foundation brush that you use. You can use a sponge, you can use a smaller brush, whatever is most convenient for you. And I just start to pat it in until that concealer is blended into my foundation. Now, if you notice that your concealer has dried down a little bit more than you wanted it to, you can always spray your brush with some setting spray if you have some. So I'm just taking this and spraying my brush a little bit. You can also spray your face if you like, but that just gives a bit more moisture, so it allows you to blend out that concealer a bit better. The benefit of using that same foundation brush is that it might still have a little bit of foundation on it, so it can help you just to kind of smoothly blend everything in. So there is that. Now, my next step, and for me this is super important because I have oily skin, is to set my face, and I set it with powder. I tend to like setting my face with a loose powder. So your loose powder is like this, like it's a loose powder, as opposed to pressed powder, which usually comes in like a compact and it is pressed down into the compact. But I like to use loose powder just because I find that that fits me better. So I'm just taking a puff. You can use a brush or a puff, and I'm dipping into the loose powder. And this is a honey shade. So translucent sometimes on deeper skin can look a little white, a little ashy. So the honey gives a bit more of a tint. And so I like to use a honey sort of shade. And I'm basically going to set my whole face, but I'm also going to concentrate on the areas where I put the concealer, because that is extra product on top of the foundation and I don't want things to crease. So I'm gonna go in. This is my chin, under eye area, and I'm just patting. You see, I haven't even gone back into the powder. I'm just using everything that is on the puff. And that sets everything down. And it'll like marinate a little bit, and like some of the powderiness will go away. But to help that, I usually take a brush, just like a big fluffy brush, and blend things in a little bit more. So essentially at this stage, you probably have like a relatively blank canvas. We haven't yet brought in some more color to the face. Before we do that, I'm just gonna go right into my eyes. And this is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. It's a great neutral palette. And I just want something quick and simple. So what I do, wiping off this brush, is since these are all like browns and neutrals, it's like the perfect everyday kind of work palette. I usually like to go into some kind of deep brown. So a brown that is maybe a shade or two darker than my skin tone. And I initially place that right at the outer area of my eye. This brush is like a fluffy brush, which is really good for blending shades. So it's just giving a bit of depth here. I like to pack it on, but again, I'm really just focusing on the outer, kind of like outer V of my eye. Once I have that down, then I want to go into a brown that's a little lighter. So I'm going to go into this one. It's almost like a peanut butter shade. And I'm just going to put that on the rest of my eye. Still using the same brush. Now, since we have two shades on there, you want to make sure that you blend everything together. And that is just kind of taking your brush and doing little circular motions to blend the colors together. We're still keeping the deeper shade on the like outer V, and we've got a bit of a lighter shade on the rest of the lid. Now, typically I like to have a sparkle or a shimmer, and I can put that shimmer right on top of the mattes that I laid down. So I'm going to take this shimmer here on like this flat kind of paddle type of brush. I'm just going to place that right over where I put the lighter shade. Now what I'm going to do is to kind of blend all of that together with my mattes. So taking that fluffy brush again and just doing those circular motions to blend everything together. Now let me do the other side. Now that I have that done, I do usually like to line my lower lash line. So I'm just going to use those deep shades, deep brown shades that I used before, this one here and this one here. And I'm taking a pointy kind of pencil brush, dipping into those, and then just lining my lower lash line. So that gives it a bit more of a like smoky look. And then to finish off the eyes, I'm going to grab some mascara, typically just use black or like a blackest black, and I'm going to run it through my top lashes. Now, one thing I like to do, since I have like sparse lashes, if I want more of a winged look, I focus a lot of the coats of mascara on the outer part, like the outer half or outer third of my lash. And that just gives it kind of like a lifted look, especially if I'm not planning to use false lashes. So you can see that there is a bit of a difference. So I'm gonna go in and do the same on my other eye. And there I have my eyes done. And if you remember, I talked about bringing color back into the face. If you wanted, you could just throw on a lip and be done with it. But I do like to have some dimension. So what I'm going to do is to take a powder bronzer. This is the one from Colored Rain, and it's in the shade Naughty Nice. So I'm just taking a shade that's a tad bit deeper and a bit warmer than my skin tone, and that is what I'm going to use to bring some of that color back. So before I talked about areas that I would highlight the face where it would be kind of lit up in the sunlight, and then there are areas of the face that have a bit more shadow when you're in the sunlight. That's usually like around here. I kind of have some natural shadow to my face and the forehead and even under the chin if you like. So I'm tapping into that bronzer and I'm just using those blending circular motions again to bring a little bit of color back to my face. But as you can see, I do kind of have some like natural bronzing, I guess. And then the last thing I'm going to do with my face before we go to the lips is to add some blush. And this is the Pat McGrath blush in Paradise Venus. It's kind of like a warm terracotta color. So I'm just taking a brush and swirling into that, and then I'm putting it at the high points of my cheeks. I don't like to bring it down too much to the apples of my cheeks, just because that can kind of pull my face down a little bit. I'll just kind of hit it. And I'm also just sort of blending that into the bronzer. We've already set the face with a setting powder, the loose setting powder. I like to also use a finishing powder. That's usually just a pressed powder in my skin tone, and I just sort of use it to blend everything together. And I'm using a fluffy brush. And then for lips, I typically kind of like always use a lip liner. I usually either have a brown lip liner or some kind of like burgundy lip liner. Those are pretty much the two shades I use. So I follow the natural curve of my lips. And a lip liner is going to help with keeping your lipstick in place. And what I like to do is just blend it a bit into my lips. And then I take a lipstick. This is the shade Lotus from Colored Rain. It's kind of like a pinky nudie color. And then I just put the lipstick on. Press my lips together. And there I have just a regular old makeup for work face. So let me know what you do. Hopefully some of this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you're taking care of yourself, and I will see you next time.